Episode 9, Blockchain Rock. We're welcoming Keegan Zarb. Keegan, thank you very much for coming on Blockchain Rock.
Thank you for having me.
So as it is custom, we'll let you introduce yourself. It's a very interesting episode because, of course, you're working for Turicum Bank. So we're hearing from more of a traditional institution within the financial services. So please let us know your story so far and perhaps a little bit of your day-to-day right now at Turicum.
Yep. So I've been in banking private banking for about 20 years now. I started in the security settlement, back office, payment side. And about 5 years into my career, I moved into relationship management and business development. So it was more geared towards institutional clients, external asset managers with a license to manage client assets, fund business. And that's my role up until now. So it's mostly been in Swiss private banks. And 3 years ago, I joined Turicum together with my colleague. And the idea was to develop that side of the business as well. So Turicum already had an offering around the asset managers and funds, but they wanted to enhance on that. So that's where we came in. And the day-to-day management is mostly servicing the clients, our clients, security orders, inquiries, but also on the business development side, trying to get new clients, trying to get the Turicum name out there, not only in Gibraltar but as well internationally. And Turicum Bank is a private bank. We're licensed here in Gibraltar. We've been here for 26 years. We are there's no other branch, no other subsidiary. We're a purely boutique bank. So we offer discretionary mandates, advisory mandates, execution-only clients.
Let me ask you one thing. You said that you focus around business development, and in explaining this part of your role, you mentioned reaching out to new client, correct? Mm-hmm. But what about new industries? Because of course we're speaking mostly about fintech today, although that's not the only offering of Turicum, and actually it's not its main offering either, I would say, if you confirm that. But more generally, like, do you approach new industries? How did you approach when you first heard about cryptocurrencies and blockchain? How come you thought about that as an opportunity rather than being skeptical about it, as is the case, I would argue, for most of the banks, which are very resistant to the idea?
Yeah. So well, let me tell you first about my first experience. The first time I had Bitcoin was when I was working for my previous employer. We had two gentlemen come in. They were looking to set up a Bitcoin fund. This was around 2014, which, Mt. Gox and all the problems around there. Yeah. So I had no idea about Bitcoin. They were talking about all this, that Bitcoin could do. And I went back to my PC after the meeting, typed in Bitcoin fraud, which is a normal check, the first check that we normally do. And it's, what is this? So that was my first experience. And probably the misconception that a lot of people have, which associate Bitcoin, blockchain to fraud, etc. So I heard it a few times after that, but back in 2017, in May, Gibraltar announced that it was going to legislate the DLT technology, and they organized an event to launch the project in the Gibraltar University. And I thought it was interesting, it would give a good networking opportunity as well. And I got really intrigued about what this whole new industry was for Gibraltar. And I saw it as an opportunity as well. If you remember, back in the late 90s, Gibraltar did similar thing with the gaming industry. Yeah. And similar to blockchain and crypto, there was a very big challenge when they were looking for bank accounts. I just thought that it was a good opportunity maybe to explore the possibility of offering bank accounts to these new startups. Maybe some of these startups would have been successful and, kept banking with us post the startup phase. It was also going to bring to the industry a lot of high net worth individuals, high executives, maybe needing bank accounts as well. So I thought there was an opportunity there. And, in Turicum, we always look for new opportunities. It's not always a traditional banking. And it's one of the advantages that we have as a bank. We have a very flat hierarchy. So basically, we've got the management team, and then we've got the board of directors and shareholders. So we don't have to go through all that group level. Yeah, exactly. So I saw this opportunity. We discussed it internally. Thought it could be a good idea. So we learned a bit more. Read a lot about it, the risks involved as well, and in July 2017 we had the first client coming in that was looking to raise an ICO. At the time there was very little guidance as well to what the regulator would want, and the regulator basically it was unregulated, so they weren't able to give much of a guidance. So it was very much up to us to put policies and procedures in place, which we did. The first thing that we did was that we would only limit to Gibraltar. So any ICOs or future DLT licensed companies, one of the reasons was because Gibraltar is a small place. We know everyone in Gibraltar, and we know the law, the jurisdiction. So we thought it was prudent to stick to Gibraltar, and we would only work with introductions via the law firms. That was sort of like a filter. There were a lot of bad actors at the time. It was one filter, one natural filter to put in place to make sure that when we got a client, that client would be a legitimate client. Or at least we had taken all the steps to make sure that was a legitimate client. And then we built all the policies and procedures around it. So we made sure that, for example, they were AML and KYCing all the clients. That the IT infrastructure had been considered, that they could produce financial projections, for example, for the next 3 years. Essentially, what we're trying to find is that was a valid project, mm-hmm. that the people behind it were legitimate, and then you can either be successful or unsuccessful. But if it was going to be unsuccessful, it wasn't because it was a fraud. It was just because like 95% of the startups fail. But at least that they couldn't fall back and say, it was for illegitimate reasons. So that was initially what we did at the time. And the industry has changed a lot as well. So we've been adapting our policies and procedures as the industry has been changing. And today's it's been working fine. We haven't had any issues. And I'm happy to say that some of the companies as well have been very successful.
Yeah, I have to say, we discussed this already previously with some of the other guests, that there is a lot of misconception around why fintech businesses fail. Because most people attribute that to being fraudulent, but mm-hmm. in reality a lot of startup within the fintech space failed simply due to a lack of experience, or simply because there was no demand for the product. Mm-hmm. We had Mihai Ivashu from Modex, mm-hmm. and he was explaining how another business that he founded, and which is currently still existing, mm-hmm. is very successful, called Money Mail Me. He was discussing how him with this business together with other players, such as for example Revolut, were ahead of time. So even though the product was really valid, at the beginning they struggled to run the business, simply because there was no demand, because it was too ahead of time and there was little to no customer demand. That of course is, as you said, changed a lot since then. I guess the public is much more accustomed now to fintech, financial technology across all offering, traditional banking, more innovative space, challenger bank, and so on and so forth. So I wanted actually to ask you your point of view on a point that we already discussed with another guest, Kriya Patel from Transact Payment. Mm-hmm. He gave us his view as to the relationship between traditional banks and fintech institutions. So mm-hmm. in his case it was e-money, but mm-hmm. we discussed it more generally. One of the main points was that in his view there are three, basically traditional banking can move in three distinct ways. So the first option that they have is to merge with fintech companies, so mm-hmm. Absorbing the technology from a different company and making it part of their service. And that's the first option. The second option was to partner with fintech institution without necessarily absorbing them. And the third one, in his view, was to perish at the hands of, falling behind what the demand is and what the market is. Do you agree? Do you think that's the type of relationship between traditional banking and fintech businesses?
Yeah, I don't think that banks would purge. I think there's still a place in the market for banks, especially when it comes to private banking, because clients, especially wealthy clients, will always want a real person at the end of the phone and not a chat, for example, on an app. So I think for now there's still a space for the traditional banking, but technology is becoming more and more and more important in the roles of banking nowadays. And big banks are competing to see who has the best technology, and ultimately the best technology would be put to the service of their clients. So the better technology you have, the better service you can give to the clients. And as time goes by, what you see is now probably the millennials, for example, and with all these social apps and technology going around, they want to socialize less and less, I would say. So maybe these challenger banks, like of Revolut, for example, appeal to this new generation. But it depends on what type of banking you're looking for. So, for example, on retail banking, I think that they could come under a lot of pressure from these challenger banks. But when it comes more for the personalized service that the high net worth individuals, the big corporations are looking for, there will still be a need for the traditional banking. Or at least that's my own opinion. But definitely technology is becoming more and more important in the banking industry, and that's it's for all to see. So maybe at some point blockchain would fuel the banking system, and especially when it comes to payments. At the moment, one of the reasons why payments is so efficient is the money doesn't go from point A to point B. You have, for example, if you're sending US dollars to the US and you're a bank in Gibraltar, then you have your own correspondent bank in the US that talks to that other correspondent in the US and then goes ultimately to the beneficiary. And with blockchain, I think you could cut through all that and make it just from point A to point B. And
sorry to interrupt you. Would it be by using a currency other than fiat money, so one that you can send end to end? Because the problem is the conversion rates and all that, no? It's also the type of coin that it's being used.
Well, I suppose it's, for example, you can look at Ripple, for example, and using their native coin. It could always be a private blockchain substituting the SWIFT system, which is the one that's currently used. So the technology is there. It's just finding a way around the technology that you could use this for payments. But I think the technology is already there for the payments from peer to peer. So it's just adapting that to the needs of the general public.
Do you think, you said like a private blockchain and centralized, do you think that, that defeats kind of the purpose of at least the reason why the blockchain came about, or at least Bitcoin, let's say? This centralization as opposed to decentralization, privatization as opposed to having public ledgers. Do you think a retail market will buy into that? I personally, for example, believe they will, because most consumers aren't as I don't think they feel as strongly about the 2008 and a lack of confidence. I think most people adopt financial technology solutions due to the ease of adoption rather than because of a philosophical reason. What's your view on that?
No, absolutely. I don't think it's got to be one or the other. It could be both. Depending on what it is that you want to achieve, then you can use either one or the other. But ultimately, the person using or consuming this product the average, I would say, doesn't really know what's going behind the hood or under the hood. What they want to do is, if I want to send money from me to you, then they want it to be there, and they want it to be there as quickly as possible, and they don't understand the whole mechanics behind it. So if by doing a private blockchain it's going to be more efficient, then people would buy into that. And it is a problem, when you get clients, especially unsophisticated clients, and you've sent the payment and the funds haven't arrived, and you try to explain to them the money chain. For them, for most of them, it's something new, something they weren't aware of. So again, if you can be more efficient for this part of the business, at least having a private blockchain that serves a purpose. But I agree that it's not always the case, and Probably a lot of the blockchain enthusiasts will crucify me for this. So, but like I said, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be depending on the solution.
Both, yeah, depending. And what about? I'm really curious about whether there is any other technology aside from blockchain and crypto that is raising interest in the banking world. I guess artificial intelligence probably is being considered and already also implemented to an extent, as you mentioned, like having the need of a person as opposed to a chat box, which is becoming increasingly common in the support side of banks and other financial services. So is there any other technology that right now has tackled your interest as a business developer? Or
I'm not much of a technology person, but I've come across as well, for example, the companies that are offering the KYC, the eKYC, and the technology they've come with, how they read the facial recognition and how they are able to, if you interact with you and see you are under any duress, judging by your facial expression. I mean, it's incredible, and that's probably the next step forward in terms of IDing people. For example, on the traditional world, we're still going through the certified true copy stamp by exactly. So this is probably another step, and one step that the challenger banks have already given, and maybe traditional banks will be following soon, which will make the life easier, not only for us as the bank employees, but definitely as well as the end user.
So going back to the second part of that question, how come you and Turicum decided to jump on the crypto train, where so many other businesses, where so many other banks have been reluctant and very cynical in respect to this technology?
I think there's not one right answer to that, but it depends on from what angle you're looking. If you're a big bank, for example, if you look at the top 5 coins, it's about 200 billion market cap. Apple is 1 trillion. So crypto for these type of banks is a drop in the ocean. So is the risk really worth the reward for them? Can they probably use the resources they would use to investigate crypto and onboard clients to other more profitable business areas? I would say that's probably one of the reasons. Then, the whole reason why Bitcoin came around was to challenge banks.
Yeah.
So it's obviously, a direct competitor, would say, challenging the status quo for the banking industry. Then there's other challenges. I don't think that other banks have been reluctant, but rather maybe they have had the appetite, but they haven't been able to do so. One of the main challenges when it comes to being able to offer banking services for crypto-related clients is correspondent banking. Not every bank is willing to process payments on behalf of the clients. So although many banks might have the appetite to do so, they don't have the infrastructure, the operational infrastructure to do so. And that's been one major pullback. I mean, for us, we've been lucky enough that we have had payment providers, correspondent banks, willing to do the payments on our behalf for our clients. And there is the issue as well, like we were saying before, with having a flat hierarchy.
Yeah.
And we were very quick to be able to take the decision. And it depends very much on the size of the bank. I think eventually big banks will take on, but it would be boutique banks like Turicum, which will make financial sense for them, and the risk will merit the reward. And then it will be maybe the mid-sized banks that start dipping their toes in it, and eventually it would go up to the big players in the industry. But I think it's more of a question of when rather than if.
I'd say that we touched upon pretty much everything we wanted to discuss together. Thank you again for coming here on Blockchain Rock. It was great to have you. I believe we touched upon everything we wanted to discuss together, and thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much for your time, and it's an honor to have shared the same stage as other illustrious individuals you've already had here.
We hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.